good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. It's crazy. It is the first day of fall, apparently. And I went outside this afternoon. The kid said, Dad, Dad, you have to go outside. And I went outside, and it was actually slightly cool in the air. Look, Dad, stand in the shade. It's Dad. It feels like fall. Sure enough. I mean, there is a little bit of coolness in the air. It's just kind of in the background. And it was so hot. Alabama summer, man. And then suddenly, here it is. Here it is. It's crazy. So, I'm very excited about that. And I know that I haven't done a live stream in a while, and I am, not being a very good host on this channel. But well, here I am. I have found it very difficult to reconcile Central Time with doing live streams, trying to put in a day's work, and then trying to have dinner with the family. So we, in the mornings we get up and the kids, before the kids do school, we have breakfast together as a family. And then we read the Bible, we sing a hymn, and we pray, and then they start the day and they do their school. But that's usually, 8:30 to 9 o'clock, and we're pretty much like 9:30 or so, then we all go our separate ways. And then, I go out and I get a few hours work in. I do lunch, we come back together, we have lunch together as a family, and then then we've got the afternoon until evening, and usually I have gotten in a few hours work in the afternoon, but sometimes also 3 days a week I've been going to the gym. So we'll go to the gym, and that takes up some time, because often when we're actually all the way in town, we realize things we should do. Like, I should go get one of those things from Ace, and we should stop and get some chicken feed, and you know what? I think we're almost out of bacon. We should go get some more bacon. And so the day kind of, sometimes ends up busy, and then it gets back to the evening. I might get a little more work done in the afternoon, and then it's time to eat dinner as a family, and I've been usually reading a book to the kids in the evening. I'm trying to deliberately spend more time with the family, and I could work. I could work nonstop, because I actually really, really like working. And I've been trying to say, okay, we're just going to go, we're going to do some family stuff and spend family time. Plus, we have friends now. It's crazy. It's like having friends. You have to like go over to their houses and be friends with them and stuff. I haven't had friends in a while, So, anyhow, guys, that's my excuse for why I have not been doing the full-on, the live streams and producing videos. I had to figure out which thing I could, not do, and so I haven't been posting nearly as often on the blog, and I haven't been doing the live streams. I have been working on doing higher quality video production and doing one or two a week, and trying to get books out, because I do run a publishing house now, and that is a big deal. It takes work, and I have a couple of other people whose books I am going to be publishing, and then I have a backlog of my own books that need to get published or republished that have been sitting and not done. So I'm working with a very good guy, production, who does our production editing, and I am working with Steve Solomon. He has written a new book, which we are going to be publishing very soon, which I'm very excited about. I've been doing a little bit of work with Noah Sanders. We may be working on a book project together, and I've been trying to get Scott Head to work on a book project with me. I think he's going to do it. And I've got John Moody, who is a very good homesteader and writer, and we are going to be publishing his book, Winning the War on Weeds, which was published but was not promoted particularly well by his previous publisher, and I am getting the rights to that, and we're going to republish it, and it's going to be awesome, because it's a really, really good book, and it needed much better coverage than it got. So I've been working on other people's projects at the same time, wrapping up Create Your Own Florida Food Forest. The text for that is done. The illustrations for that is done. It is in production mode now. It is being typeset. The illustrations are being set and all that stuff. And a big thanks to my sister Christy for helping with that. So let me say hi to everybody here. Hey, Amy and Yellow Gem and Alan and Megan and Scallywag and Becky and Joe and a YouTube channel and Ev and let's see, I don't want to miss anybody here. Flannel Farms, that is my brother, Flannel Farms. We're going to talk about Flannel Farms here. Stiegelman Family Farm and Boyd and Carolyn and don't eat the foxgloves. That's funny. Trump 1, Jeff, Shemin, Christy, Clapo. That was what we called toads down on the island. After the French word for frog, it got mangled. Jacques and William and Karen and Robin. It's good to see all you guys. Love Cat. Tim, Gloria. Man, we've got a lot of good people here. Marcus Aurelius, Kathleen. Nice to see you all. It's fun to do this. I kind of miss doing this, but yeah, how do I cram it into my day? I can't figure it out. I don't have enough day. I told Rachel, I said, you know, I wish we had like 8 days in a week. And she's like, it doesn't work that way. God gave us 7. If it's not done inside of the 6 days of work and the 1 day of rest, well, there you go. Arcad sends a super chat. It says, 10A, Southwest Florida. I have started chipping palm fronds for mulch. Works great. Oh yeah, they're awesome. Can I chop and drop right on top of that, or do I need to remove the chips? I would chop and drop on top of it. When you're grinding up stuff that is already wet, it rots down pretty nicely. If you're grinding up dry stuff, it takes longer to rot down, right? So it's high carbon, so it takes longer to rot. However, if it's on top of the surface of the ground, right, you're not burying it around the root zone, so it's not sucking up the nitrogen out of the soil. If it's laying on top of the ground, that's the way nature does it. Stuff falls on top of the ground, it'll rot down at its own pace. And so that's why you don't have to worry about everything turning yellow in your gardens because there's a nitrogen shortage just when you mulch. If you mulch around your plants, they don't really care. But if you were to dig that mulch underneath the ground, it would soak up the nitrogen that is in the soil. I had that happen with my corn. One of my rows of corn this spring, there were a bunch of leaves in the garden along this one strip, and I kind of raked some of them up, but I didn't rake them all up. And I tilled, and they were brown leaves. They went down into the ground. That section where the brown leaves were ended up, the corn was like a foot or two shorter than the rest of the corn, and I ended up dumping some chicken manure or nitrogen fertilizer or something on it. I can't remember what I did. I fertilized it with something to get it kicking again because there was a definite nitrogen shortage going on. And so, if you're putting it on top and it's just rotting down, you're good. You don't have to worry about it. It'll be fine. And it rots down nicely over time. It's a little slow, but it's okay. It'll feed it. So thank you very much for the question and the tip. I appreciate it. Root stocks to the moon. Okay, that's good, Love Cat. To the moon! Like root stocks. Yeah, Steve Solomon's new book is called Water Wise Gardening. It's based on his book. He wrote a book called Water Wise Gardening back in the early 90s, /Gardening Without Irrigation. I asked him if we could republish it, and he said no. I'm going to make it way better. I'm going to expand it, and we're going to cover both irrigation and gardening without irrigation, and it will be expanded to fit the entire country instead of a small niche. Before, the book had some good information in it, but it was completely targeted towards Cascadia. And so it was not applicable to most of the country. And so he decided to make it valuable to the people in California and Texas and Florida and anywhere else where you want to garden using the least amount of water possible and be wise about how you use water, whether you're irrigating or growing completely without irrigation, because he gives you the tools to grow without irrigation, which is utterly fascinating to me. Like the idea of dry farming. I love it. It's brilliant, and it's exactly what we need to hear right now. So he spent a couple of months rewriting it and adding in a lot more details, including his most recent recipe for complete organic fertilizer and some other good details. So that should be out pretty soon, and it'll be back in print. It'll be a new book. It takes some of the core ideas of the original one and expands it into a nice big book. So it's pretty cool. All right, so let's talk about fall gardening. And before we do that, I have something. I'm trying to find something here. And it's being very slow. I noticed today, my brother Brian has hit 950 subscribers on his Flannel Farms channel. He just bought a homestead in Virginia and is farming it and experimenting with different techniques. And it's a really cool piece of property that he ended up having a chance to buy unexpectedly, so he jumped and took it. So he is basically homesteading from scratch now, building chicken tractors and all that kind of stuff. And he wants his to have a successful YouTube channel and for YouTube to be part of his life and to document what he's doing from more of a beginner perspective. He's a beginner on these things. He's a firefighter for his main job, but he is also a very, very good handyman. Like, he puts in roofs for people and builds garages and things like that you won't really see me doing all that often because I'm not nearly as good at it as he is. So if you're interested in building and homesteading and all that sort of thing, I really encourage you. I just dropped his link. If you could subscribe to his channel, he needs to hit 1,000 subscribers for YouTube to take him seriously. That's the way it works now. They'll run ads on your stuff when you have less than 1,000 subscribers. But if you hit 1,000 subscribers and you get enough hours watched, suddenly they open the door to you and they will actually share the revenue from the ads that they run. So if he could get a few extra bucks a month off of doing that sort of thing, it would help. He's trying to become less fragile and not just rely on the system right now because everything's kind of a little crazy and you don't know how things are going to go. So if you can go to Flannel Farms, that channel, and hit subscribe, I would like to see him hit 1,000 by the end of this stream. So I will mention it occasionally. If you guys could go over there and give him a boost, he really needs it. We've got 96 people on right now. I know some of you have subscribed already. If you could give his channel a boost, his name is Brian. He's a good guy. His wife, 3 kids. And he is going to be homesteading and farming, and his video production quality and everything is getting better every day. He is he's very entertaining to watch too, so you won't be bored. Flannel Farms. So hopefully you guys can boost him over 1,000. All right, so let's talk about fall gardening. Actual content starts here. Fall survival gardening. 3 words. So much meaning. Fall, a time of year. Survival, what you want to do. Gardening, what you want to do more than anything else in the entire world, other than survival. Maybe. So, fall survival gardening. We are a bit concerned about how weird the world has gotten. And I've said it before. The world is weird, and it's getting weirder. We live in an incredibly complicated society. If you live in the city, you're relying on a lot of things to run smoothly. The roads, the water, the electric, the grocery stores, the shipping lines, the trucks coming in, the delivery of beer. These things are all important. And if one little thing breaks a little bit, it gets bad. And there are a lot of people that are facing potential unemployment. There are people that are facing lockdowns. There are people that are facing poor decisions that are leading to collapsing businesses and other stuff. There's a lot of problems going on right now in shipping and supply. I don't know if you guys pay any attention, but there are boats that are just sitting out there and not getting offloaded. There's shipping container shortages. If you try to run a business and you try to get stuff, a lot of parts are missing right now. If you've gone laptop shopping, you'll notice that some things are hard to get. Things are just kind of weird. It's a terrifying place. Yeah, so we don't really know how all that stuff's going to go. So, a long time ago, when I first started my blog, I called it Florida Survival Gardening. And the idea is to make sure that your garden and your gardening is capable, potentially, of being ramped up to a point that it'll supply a decent amount of your calories. Completely supplying all of your calories through gardening takes a lot of work. But supplying enough to get you through a tough time isn't actually that hard. Scott says, meat prices here just went way up. Yeah, I noticed that too. It is kind of crazy. Thank you to you guys that are subscribing to Flannel Farms. Much appreciated. So everything is getting a little funky. It's getting a little weird. Yeah, and I look at having a garden as it's not only good for your spirit to be out there in the garden. It's encouraging to be in the garden. It's uplifting to be in the garden. Especially if you leave your phone behind and you go out in the garden and you spend some time pulling a few weeds, watching the ladybugs, picking a few beans, picking some peppers, listening to the cicadas scream at 300 decibels till your ears are bleeding, and it just drowns everything out in the entire world. You know, there's a real piece of being in the garden, but along with that, there is a sense of you are growing your own food. I mean, our primary needs: food, shelter, water, a hot wife, barbecue grill, and a Ford Econoline van. I think that's pretty much Maslow's hierarchy of needs right there. So having that food in the ground is one of those primary things. So when I started my website, Florida Survival Gardening, I had that in mind. How can we grow our food in Florida? I actually started it when I was not making very much money. I was freelancing. The economy was not doing all that great. And I had, I don't know, how many kids did I have then? I was on my fourth child, and I think, no, fifth. Fifth child, and making like $2,000 a month or something. It's, it's tough. A little tough. I wanted to, be near my mom down in South Florida for a while, and I ended up not having it. Not being able to manage it. Like, we actually moved near my mom for a while and rented until we completely ran out of money, and then we ended up moving to the Central Florida and living in a trailer for a while. And then we ended up being able to buy a foreclosure home and fix it up. And that kind of settled us for a while. And then, but during that time period, we were always trying to grow some of our vegetables. And one of the things that I was looking for is, like, what would make us full? What will make us full if we don't get enough? We always had enough to buy food. Not enough to buy the food that we would love to eat, like steak. But, we would do things like, my wife had a book called The Daily Bean. If you don't have The Daily Bean, it's a great book. It's a great book. It's all these things you can do with bean. Bean fudge, bean soup, bean bread. Beans are your friends. Beans are cheap. And they have protein in them. And if you soak them overnight or ferment them a little bit, it makes a difference. They're much more digestible. Like, I soak beans for 24 hours before we cook them. And it starts them sprouting a little bit, and they'll start to ferment a little bit. I usually throw a little bit of, okay, I'm gonna get kind of a hippie-ish here. This is hippie stuff, isn't it? Kombucha. I'll throw in some kombucha with the beans, and I will throw in some plain yogurt, a little bit. Soak the beans in a big bowl. Pour in your bag of beans. You cover them with water, like an inch over the top. You throw in a couple of spoons of yogurt, live yogurt, active cultures. Throw in some kombucha if you have it. If I have sauerkraut brine, sometimes I throw a little of that in there. Whatever, like, living, active thing. If you don't have that, just soak it in water. But I use non-chlorinated water when I do that too. That's important because chlorinated water, obviously, the bacteria are not going to get in there. So what you want to have happen is for them to break down a little bit. So if they soak for 24 hours, it will help the digestion immensely. You're not going to be like, why did I eat that? Now, I would rather eat steak, but you let those foods come back to life and start to ferment a little bit on the counter. It makes a big difference. They're actually digestible. So we were at this point where we're eating beans and rice, and we grew our own vegetables because then we could have healthy stuff. Anytime we could get extra fruits or something, we would can them. Somebody would say, my pear tree's full of pears, and we would be over there. We would go over with laundry baskets, pick a bunch of pears, come home and make pear sauce and pear brandy and pear salsa and dried pears and pears in syrup and all this stuff. Like, it was food, and we would go get it. But I was interested in, like, what can you store in the ground? So, you want to have a little emergency fund. You want to have a little emergency fund if you can help it. Sometimes you can't, you're at such a bad point that you can't even get up to having an emergency fund. But if you are able to save $1,000, $1,000, as Dave Ramsey says, there's your emergency fund. You save up $1,000 and you count that as $0, right? So if you have to dip into that $1,000 to fix something, your tire blows out in the car and you got to get a new tire, and it's $100. Now you're down to $900, right? So you put that money back. You pretend that you are $100 in debt until you've paid your emergency fund back. So the emergency fund is important. You hold on to that emergency fund. So what is your food emergency fund? I had read Dave Ramsey's book. I actually gave it to a couple of family members. Total Money Makeover. Really good stuff. I like Dave on microeconomics, but I do not like him on macroeconomics because I believe he trusts in the system way too much. I don't trust Roth IRAs and 401 whatevers, 401ks and stuff. I don't trust these things. I would rather have seeds and tools and that sort of thing than trust in a paper system I think is utterly and completely corrupt. But I am a little more paranoid than most people. So, what foods could I keep in the ground? I was thinking, man, okay. If you're further north, like when I was in Tennessee, you could grow Jerusalem artichokes around the edges of your property in kind of rougher areas, and you get lots and lots of stuff. Lots and lots of roots. Now, what I did discover is that they will give you the most horrendous gas in the entire world if you're not used to eating them. So there are ways of processing them. Again, you have to let them kind of be pre-processed a little bit via fermentation and that sort of thing. But you roll with it and you plant these things around the edge of your yard. So now you've got some foods there. Now, if I was going to think long term, how do I have a bank? What is my emergency fund of calories? I would plant nuts. In Tennessee, we used to go over, a neighbor had a black walnut tree. We would go over and harvest the black walnuts and husk them and dry them, and then we could eat black walnuts. It was fantastic. Chestnuts. Somebody else had a chestnut tree. We got chestnuts, and we would store the chestnuts as long as we could. And these long-term things are banks in the ground. But when it comes to the survival gardening and how do you save that initial emergency fund? How do you get stuff in the ground right away? Roots are the very best. So, white potatoes. White potatoes are a savings account in the ground. If you could grow white potatoes, grow white potatoes. So, the further north you go, white potatoes become more and more valuable until you hit a certain point where it's too cold to even grow those. And then you basically have to have a stockpile of caribou or woolly mammoth or something like that. But generally through most of the United States and Canada, that is, your potatoes are your staple. As you get further south, you add sweet potatoes as a staple. Sweet potatoes are really good. Food in the ground. Jerusalem artichokes also handle really cold climates. So they're good. When you get down to the really warm areas, you get beyond sweet potatoes, then you get all the roots of the tropics. Taro, dasheen, malanga. There are edible elephant ear varieties that have various names that make big roots. There are the true yams of the tropics. There's cassava. So there's a lot of roots that are very good to stockpile on the ground. But by the time you get to the tropics, you usually barely have to even try to grow food anymore. I mean, one of the reasons that I liked the Caribbean as a bug out location was that you had a year-round growing season and food would just literally fall off the trees. Tons of food on the ground. I mean, you grow a breadfruit tree, you get like 500 pounds of breadfruit, and you got a jackfruit tree, it's like 500 pounds of jackfruit. You got coconuts, 300 pounds this coconut tree, 300 pounds of coconuts over. It's just like food everywhere. So good, man. Everywhere. So it's really easy to build a big savings account there. So I look at the roots in particular as being a savings account in the ground. Let me answer a couple of super chats here. QRP Life says, from a physical standpoint, it is all about energy returned on energy invested. Try to make that ratio positive. Yes, you don't want to be absolutely killing yourself to do something that doesn't make sense. So this is why I am not super dogmatic on my gardening methods, because I recognize that different tools at different points, different methods are going to work for different people. Different people are comfortable with different methods. Some people like wide row gardening. Some people like intensive gardening. Some people like to do their raised beds. Look, the important part is that you get out there and you do gardening. Now, there are some things that I find make much more sense for energy in to return out, like doing wide rows and using a wheel hoe and having wide spacing so you don't have to invest much into irrigation, and it's very easy to weed and maintain. I like to grow directly in the ground rather than bringing in truckloads of dirt or mulch or anything like that. There are some of those things I like to do just because I like the simplicity of it. But sometimes you may also find that there is a corollary to this if you are trying to grow something like potatoes. You may say, well, I can get potatoes for $5 a bag. Why would I bother growing potatoes in the ground? It doesn't make sense from a return standpoint. And in that case, I would say for two reasons I like to grow potatoes in the ground. One, because it makes me less fragile. It makes me anti-fragile. To have the food in the ground makes me less fragile and our family less fragile. So if there were a hurricane, if there was a big truckers strike, if there's a worse pandemic or something like that, and the potatoes are not delivered to the local grocery stores, I still have potatoes. So that's one. It makes me less fragile. So I'm willing to invest the extra time to grow some potatoes for the peace of mind that growing potatoes brings me. Secondarily, the potatoes that I grow at home are higher quality, they taste better, and they have much higher nutrition than the potatoes that I get from the store. There is a remarkable difference between homegrown potatoes and store potatoes. There's a remarkable difference. The flavor is so much better. So if you have built up your soil and added micronutrients and you're composting and you've got lots of soil life and that sort of thing, and you grow potatoes, those are the most potatoy potatoes that you've ever had in the history of potatoes. You cannot stop. You're like, oh my gosh, these are so good. So from a health standpoint, I can't actually buy potatoes that are as good as the potatoes that I grow. So those are two reasons where I would say from the energy standpoint, yes, it takes me more energy, and it's not necessarily economic for me to grow my potatoes always, but the value of the potatoes are so good. They're so good from a quality of life perspective and from peace of mind perspective of having the calories in the ground. Gloria sends a generous super chat, 25 bucks. Thank you, Gloria. I can't give $1,000, but here's a little bit. That is more than generous. Thank you, Gloria. I appreciate you so much. Will Garden for tips. So, you know, when we're looking at all this stuff, yeah, Jason says, good point. On the day that the stores stop carrying potatoes, it will be too late to have some for starting your own. I agree. And by the way, guys, I'm going to keep bringing this up. Please go over to my brother's YouTube channel and subscribe. He needs to hit 1,000 subscribers. He hit 950 today. I would love to see him. If we could give him some love and encouragement and subscribe to his channel. He is a great guy. He's my best friend. Now that my imaginary friend has left me for some reason, my brother Brian is my best friend. And he is homesteading in Virginia, just launching a homestead, just launching a YouTube channel, and he has some good ideas, and he is a hard worker and does cool stuff. So if you could go subscribe to him and encourage him, we've got 183 people here. We've definitely got to be able to push him up and over 1,000. And then if he gets over 1,000 and he gets enough views on his channel, he will be able to get some of the ad revenue, because YouTube's going to run ads on his stuff whether he likes it or not. And if you hit over 1,000, YouTube will allow you to monetize the channel, so he might actually be able to make a couple of bucks a month from it and maybe get some more seed money. So if you guys can do that, I really appreciate it. Yeah, Brian the Bad. No, it's Brian, and he's at Flannel Farms. So sub if you can. Thank you for those who have already subbed. Oh, he's at 990 right now? Hey guys, is that serious? Are you serious? Did you guys push him that high already? That's awesome. He needs it. It'll be so encouraging to him. He told me today that he's at 950, and I said, man, I'm gonna do a live stream today. I'm gonna push you. My people will do it. My people will get you there. We'll save you, Brian. Okay, so back to the topic of roots in the ground. For fall. Now this is really going to depend on your climate, but the air has gotten cooler now, which means that some stuff that didn't really want to germinate and wouldn't do well and that the bugs would destroy earlier in the season is going to do okay right now. No, don't go defrauding YouTube, Gloria. That's funny. Can I make a new YouTube identity? I don't know if that helps him or not. That's funny. So, anyhow, when I was further north, right? So in Tennessee, I would plant my garlic in the fall, and I would do a lot of mulching and composting in the fall. And I would do some root crops. Mostly I counted on Jerusalem artichokes, and we would find ways to eat them. They do taste good. They're very pleasant. And I like them. But you have to get used to the digestion. 999! All right. Hey, maybe we'll get him to 1,100 today. Thank you, guys. That's awesome. Did he make it? 1,001! You guys! We're only partway through the stream. I can't believe y'all. You're amazing. Thank you all. Keep throwing them in. Joy of the Garden says, wish I had you for a brother. Oh, you can adopt me. You know, one of the great things I have found, one of the great things about being a Christian is that we are adopted into the family of God. So if you're a Christian, you are my brother or my sister. And I really felt this when I traveled overseas and I met a bunch of Indonesian believers, and they lived in like the middle of nowhere, you know, like an hour and a half from civilization, no running water, no power in these villages. And then there's this little church made out of chopped palm trees and thatching and concrete that they hauled into concrete bit by bit, and they carved their own pews with hand tools. And they welcomed me, and they hugged me, and they called me brother, and we prayed together, and we shared meals together, and it was like I had brothers and sisters I have never met. Wow. You're kind of part of something bigger than yourself, which is pretty cool. So, it just really hit me. I was like, you don't look like my biological brothers and sisters, but I'm feeling it. It's crazy. But it's a beautiful thing. Anyhow, hey, God bless you, Brian. I'm glad that you could show up for a little bit. So, really cool. I can't believe you guys pushed him over 1,000. If you're not subscribed to my brother, the link is in the description. He can use as many subscribers as we can get him right now. He is trying to build a lot of alternative systems and be anti-fragile because he, like I, also believes that this is going to be a tough time. We've had it really easy for a long time, and it looks like there are forces inside of our country that are just, there's a lot of people are just being torn apart in every direction right now. And when the pandemic shook us all up, we ended up all fighting each other, and things have gotten really crazy. So, I would love to see him have the support of a decent audience on YouTube that is sharing ideas and telling him, telling him he's doing all right, and it's nice to have that. Plus, if we can take some of Google's ad money and give it to my brother rather than it just going to Google, I like that idea. So, fall gardening, as you get further south, you basically get a second spring. But things are going backwards. It's starting hot and it's moving towards cold. Some stuff does not like that. Like peppers and tomatoes. When it gets too cold, they don't like it anymore and they just stop. And some things do fine. Like you start, instead of bolting, like cabbages and pak choi and things like that, if you start them from seed when it's warmer and they get so it starts to cool off, they do well. They don't bolt. Like cool season, they're running, and they're looking good, and then suddenly it goes, it gets too hot, you send up seed stalks, they get bitter, and that's it, you're done. We used to grow really, really good salad gardens all the way through the winter in Florida by planting a bunch of salad greens in the fall. So, rocket, arugula, spinach, and lettuce mixes. I would sprinkle that all on the ground, some mustards and things. I would just take multiple packets of seeds, mix it all together, and throw them down the ground of a newly prepared bed, rake it in with a lot of compost, and turn it around, and then water that in, and they would all start sprouting and growing, and then we would thin our way through that bed and eat it. And if a frost came, which would take the lettuce out, we would just throw an old blanket over the bed. It was like a 4-foot by 12-foot bed, actually a couple of blankets or sheets, and we would just cover the entire bed with all the salad that's in it for the freeze, and then take it off the next morning. So, there we go. It didn't mind the cool weather so long as it didn't freeze solid. But it was fresh salad greens. Now you get further north, it gets harder to do. But the brassicas take temperatures down into the 20s, so if you want fresh, healthy, good stuff like cabbages and mustards and collards and kale, those guys, they do fine. They will just sail on through, weather's down. Sometimes it gets down to the teens and they start to get burned. Scott says, cabbages, carrots, broccoli, cauliflower, and lettuce do really well here in Zone 9A through the winter. Yes, definitely. Definitely. Now, I'll tell you, I don't know if you guys have seen anything like this before. I do have a problem in my garden right now, which is really irritating me. I will tell you guys what is going wrong with my fall garden. You saw my last YouTube video where I planted those Brussels sprouts. Okay, so hold that in your mind. I dug some nice holes, and I put some ashes and some good stuff in there. And it's nice loose soil, dug really deep, and then I planted it with Brussels sprout seeds. And then I left it. Hold that thought in your mind. Now, jump over a few beds. I noticed that I have these little itty bitty black bugs. They are not flea beetles. They are some sort of, they look like a tiny little cricket or something that's the size of a flea. Little soft-bodied things. It's ridiculous. Little soft-bodied things. And they are all over those beans that I planted. And they are chewing the living daylights out of the leaves. So the leaves are turning white. I planted some summer squash last month in all the gaps of the grocery row gardens. All of them are dwarfed and twisted and sick, and the leaves are only like this big when they should be this big right now. And they have these little nasty beetle things on them. I have never seen them before we moved here. And so I go out, I told Rachel, I said, you know what? I'm just going to pray in the garden and ask God, what is going on? Why are all my new seedlings getting chewed to bits? And these little, if you zoom in on them, they look like tiny little crickets with little jumpy back legs. And you go and you walk close and they kind of hide underneath. And they don't move like aphids. They move very fast. And they skitter around underneath the leaves and stuff when I get close. Like they'll see me and they go under. Maybe thrips, I don't know. Weirdest thing. Never had them in Florida. Never had them anywhere else I gardened. But they are chewing the living daylights out of stuff. So I got a little bit of soapy water with a little bit of oil in it, and I went out and sprayed some. And then it rained for days, and I'm sure it washed it all off. It didn't seem to make any difference anyways. And so I said, I'm just going to pray about it and see what happens. So we go out in the garden. I said, God, you know these are your gardens. You know that we're trying to do our best here, and I don't really know what I should do with this. I don't really want to spray poison. So if you got any ideas, let me know. That's how I talk to God. You got ideas, let me know. However you want to work this out, this is all yours, and we're only borrowing it for the time that we're here on earth. So, Lord, it's yours. So I have this little prayer in the garden, and my wife goes out and prays with me. And I'm like, okay, I'm sure we're going to find something. I'm sure we'll figure out how to get rid of these things because they're just tearing up all our new stuff. I've got this 60-foot row of beans, and all of them have these leaves that are turning white because they've been chewed so much. So we walk around the corner back to where I had planted those beautiful Brussels sprouts and dug those beautiful pits. And what do I find? Every one of those pits has had the center of it dug out in the dirt thrown sideways. And there are dog footprints all over the bed. And I'm like, what? Why do these curses come down upon me? I tore my robe and I screamed to the heavens and I fell on my face. No, I didn't. I was just like, come on. So my only guess is that the charcoal that I put in there still smelled like pork chops or something because it came out of my barbecue grill. But I don't know. But a neighbor's dog from somewhere way off, we don't have any neighbors that are close, somewhere way off, came in the night and tore the bed up and dug holes in it. So these things happen. In complete disclosure, I can't have the gardens perfect. And this is why we always plant and replant and at different seasons and at different times, because some stuff that did really, really great in the spring and grew like crazy is now doing terribly for me. Other stuff is doing great right now. But, oh, those little bugs are annoying. I should see if I can get a really close zoom up and post it to the channel. You guys can tell me what they are. I can't find pictures of them online at all. I don't know what they are. Josh, thank you very much for the super chat. Josh sent a generous super chat. Thank you. Much appreciated. I appreciate the tips. And Carolyn sends a chat and says, Brian is over 1,000 now, so here's some cash for you to promote him. Brian needs to start having live streams so he can get super chats too. We are all brothers and sisters. Amen. Thank you very much. I don't know how. I will try to promote Brian. Probably give him some money for his tractor because he's looking at getting a little like a little one, a used one um, that can mow the grass, and there's a tiller attachment for it too, which is pretty cool. Let me see here. I'm gonna read what you guys are saying. Karen, congratulations, 24-month anniversary. It feels like we've been together much longer than that, Karen. That's amazing. Thank you. I like the African basil too. It's very good. Thrips, black aphids, scale. It doesn't look like scale to me. Alien bugs, very, very likely. Have I tried diatomaceous earth? You know, I haven't tried diatomaceous earth in quite a while. It's a good idea. I should try that. I could dust them. It's just been pouring and raining and raining and raining and raining. Kudzu bugs. I don't know. I'll have to look all these things up. Up close, they look a bit like lobsters. Interesting. They're not mole crickets. I have mole crickets. Mole crickets are usually really big. Lightning strikes the bugs. Yeah, I hope so. I'm Job. Oh no. Arcade Zero says, my wife is a Christian. She's really taught me the value of being thankful. I think that Christianity, Arcade, the morality of it is nice, but it is the what I believe is the only answer to the problem of evil in the world, and the only proper response to it. The world is very weird and evil, and there's a lot of horrible stuff that goes on. And if I were not a Christian, I would not have any hope through that. I do believe that the reason we see so many evil things and wicked things and bad problems with, you know, people are super, super rich and other people are starving to death and stuff like that, is because this world is occupied territory. This world is run by evil forces who are in rebellion against God, and this stuff is running its course. And if you are a Christian, you have some defense against that, but you are still having to live in a world that is occupied and damaged and broken, and horrible things happen to children. Horrible things happen to animals. You know, I mean, one of my kids was talking about animal testing the other day, and I'm like, you know, it's really disgusting. There are a lot of things that are really disgusting. But it's gross. And it's just kind of wicked just to, like, torture creatures just to see if, you know, what happens if you hook up this part of the brain or that part of the brain. That's evil. I mean, it feels like it's evil beyond how evil we are. So, definitely being thankful. Thank you, the Lord, for the blessings that we are allowed, that do come to us, despite the fact that the world is not a great place, and that we are going to die, and that everything we have is eventually going to be gone. We thank, if we're thankful for that, we're thankful for the chance to read a book with a 2-year-old, you know, to have a wife that loves you, to have a good mom or a good dad, to have friends, to have interests, to have good plants, to have good food, to be able to smoke a cigar. I mean, all these things are wonderful. Some people may not like the cigar part, but being thankful is good, and I'm glad you're married to a Christian, and I hope you consider where that thankfulness is coming from. Yeah, fish emulsion. I didn't put any fish emulsion. It's I had bone meal in my mixes, and the dogs would come and they would dig the beds all to shreds when I was using bone meal. So I had to switch to a synthetic phosphorus, which just irritates me. Like, I was doing the nice organic bone meal. It's awesome stuff. And then here I am, I'm like, well, I think I got diammonium phosphate instead. Obnoxious. Could be coyotes, Scott says. Yeah, my neighbor said that too. It's quite possible. I don't know about springtails. I'll have to look. I really don't usually pay that much attention to pests. I usually just grow a ton of stuff and see what happens. But in this case, I'm actually really irritated because this particular pest is across a bunch of different stuff. Yes, and washing them down with soapy water is what I started doing, but then, you know, it's rained and rained and rained, so I may be able to do it. So The world, as in creation, is not evil. The world is just damaged by evil. Well, Arcad, maybe you're being called by the Holy Spirit. Perhaps you should answer. I have gone through more agnostic times, but not anymore. Very short agnostic times. Especially when I saw how the Lord worked in my parents' lives and how they raised us. I mean, my dad would do things like, well, we don't have a vehicle right now because our vehicle broke down, so let's pray that we get another one. And he would pray, and then like we would get one for a really good deal, or somebody would show up with a vehicle or something. And I'm just like, that's just the way I learned. Like when you talk to God, it was like you would ask your dad for something. Like, hey, Dad, can I borrow the keys? Hey, Dad, do you mind if I have an extra plate of food? And then like God would send him stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, it could be coincidence, but it was like coincidences that happened so many times that I really just can't believe that it was coincidence. Let me see, where are we? Can you stop the tobacco smoking whenever you want? Yeah, I haven't smoked in a couple of weeks. My wife put me on this Whole30 diet to see how I feel after it, because she was doing it, and I have had one of my eyelids twitching off and on and it's bugging me, and it's been doing this for like 6 weeks. So why is my eyelid twitching? I don't know. So I'm wondering if it's some sort of a deficiency or something like that. So what she said was, why don't we separate you from pretty much, all the normal stuff you eat? I mean, not really. I already ate pretty well, but she's like, stop all grains and all sugar and all alcohol and no tobacco. And so I've been doing that now for a couple of weeks. And I lost a couple of pounds and I have more energy. But my eyelid is still twitching, so I don't know. So, yes, I did smoke one cigar when my brother came into town, though. My brother-in-law. My brother does not smoke, but my brother-in-law, we had cigars together when he was in town, so. Love Cat sounds like a good deal. Kelly says, Jesus smokes weed. How come you don't grow it? I don't know what Jesus you're talking about. Probably Jesus. I think I saw that guy. Besides, do you want me to go to prison? Do you realize I live in Alabama? Dude. Bugs are ephemeral and will go away soon. Yes, generally they come and go. But this one's kind of frustrating me because I was really hoping to get some dry beans. It was an experiment. Jeff says, I've been taking 5,000 IUs of D3 and 900% of RDA for zinc. Wife literally tested COVID positive right before the stream started, but I'm still negative. D3, well, may your wife come through okay. I agree with the taking D and zinc. I would probably also add a lot of extra vitamin A and vitamin C and quercetin, And I'm not going to say anything about horses or anything like that, but Alan says eyelid twitches can be muscle strain for heavy lifting. Well, maybe. Sheena says, I felt better after I cut out gluten. Of course I have lupus. I'm looking for... Of course you have lupus! Oh, gosh! Of course! Because, like, literally everybody that cuts out gluten, it's lupus. No, I'm sorry that you have lupus. I had a friend that had that. But, yes, I don't eat gluten. I feel way better not eating gluten. I feel lousy when I eat gluten. And I love bread, but I don't eat it. I just don't eat it at all. The only bread I have is communion on Sunday, and that's not enough to bother me. But it's terrible. I feel terrible when I eat it. Salt beef and water and coffee. I did do that once. I could do that again. It wouldn't hurt me much. It's a very good elimination diet, going carnivore. Magnesium. I don't have magnesium bicarbonate. I had some magnesium sulfate last night because my sister, who's a nurse, said that I should take some. I'll try some magnesium. Magnesium, bruh. Magnesium bicarbonates. Jesus will hook you up with that magnesium bicarbonates. Yeah, no sugar. Coffee enemas. Yeah, let's not stretch it. Scott asks where Arch Enema is. Arch Enema disappeared year and a half ago and haven't heard from him. I tried writing him too and haven't heard from him. So the tobacco is easy to grow from seeds, and that's a pretty good barter good. I also bought I bought an entire box of Jim Beam Black whiskey when I got. It's cool. Like Joe Biden sent me a child tax credit, and I was like, "What can I do with this?" I know what I do. I'll go buy whiskey. No, I only bought whiskey with part of it, but I stocked up on a few things, got a few extra things that some extra fertilizer and some cool stuff. But I bought the whole box of like 750 milliliter Jim Beam Black whiskey just as a trade good. Look, and if it gets that bad, it's like if we get into what is it, doomsday prepper territory, it's like yeah, it's kind of cool. Like I have like a box of liquor bottles, and I just stuck it in the pantry. Like you know what, someday it might get real bad, and I'll be like, well, Mr. Drunk, you probably need some work, and I need a fence built to fence in the cows that I'm raising now for the my apocalypse cows. And Mr. Drunk, I will give you this 750 milliliter if you help me put a fence in, something like that. It might be valuable in the future. So I thought savings account, right? I mean, liquor never goes out of style. Florida survival gardening. What would be the best thing to plant to eat every single day that doesn't require much cooking? That's a good question. That doesn't require much cooking. Your problem with a lot of stuff is that it's not particularly edible until you cook it. So yams, sweet potatoes, plantains, green bananas, most stuff requires some cooking. Beans. There's not a lot that you could grow without. I mean, you don't have to cook the living daylights out of stuff. My favorite staple crops for Florida are bananas and plantains because you can eat them as a fruit. You can also eat them as a starch earlier on. So if you get them when they're not fully ripe, they're a really good starch crop. They're like a root crop. Good for making stews with, good for frying, great for you, good, valuable, complex starch. But then if you let them ripen up, then you get bananas. I love bananas. Bananas are great. And fried plantains when they're all the way ripe, that's really good eating right there. So it's both a fruit and a starch. And then I would also plant yams and cassava. If you have cassava in the ground in Florida, you could perpetually plant it and just rotate through the roots. That's very good. But you just have to cook it until it's soft. But I can't think of anything I suppose there's probably some tree fruits and nuts and things like that, but I would want more complex carbohydrates to fill me up. Don't Eat the Fox Love says, the Gardening in Canada channel has a good video out on the use of dish soap on plants. She's a young soil scientist with very interesting myth-busting videos. That sounds good. Magnesium bicarbonate. Marcus says, David, have you seen anyone do terra preta in the 3-foot raised metal gardens like the ones birdies make? I haven't, but I don't see why you couldn't do it. I mean, I have done raised beds where I've thrown in a ton of junk into the bottom of it. I would definitely try it. Science says I am a drug dealer. Okay. I guess that's in reference to the tobacco and alcohol for the apocalypse. Donna says, how do you store sweet potatoes for next year's slips? My sweet potatoes are small and aren't doing any more growing, not big enough to eat. I I put them. I would put them in a box in my pantry. That's what I would do. I would dig the potatoes, put them in a box in the pantry so they stay cool, and they don't spoil. Um, I would just put them in a closed cardboard box or closed cardboard bag, and I usually had them keep all the way through the winter. I don't know how long your winters are, but that worked for us. And then I have them to start the next season. I would start planting out the little sweet potatoes in soil, usually in February in a warm location, so they start growing. Yeah, longevity spinach, but you can't. I mean, longevity spinach is not going to fill you up. It's good, but you can't get full on it. Arkansas Woodcutter says, I learned to make whiskey from popcorn. Sutton on YouTube. The man who makes the medicine can make his own rules. Whiskey is an excellent trade item. Yes, definitely. And I really should, I should get a still and make my own. It would be pretty cool. Though it's it's Alabama, so there are some rules here. Take Back America says, I use perethrin's neem oil, and for doomsday bugs, 7 dust, long shelf life. Yeah, you can do that. I'm wondering if there's probably a way around it. Usually, the pest issues resolve themselves. This one's kind of annoying right now. Well, guys, I'm going to take off. Thank you all for showing up. If you have not subscribed to my brother's YouTube channel, please go over there and subscribe. I just dropped a link in the chat. I am going to try and do live streams occasionally as we go through the winter. I just did a really kind of a fun video on pruning a gigantic fig tree, and I am going to put that up probably tomorrow morning. You can put your yam pieces any way you want to, Green Christendom. You can also, yes, you could definitely cook. I have 2 rocket stoves currently, and I really like them, and I have woods all around me, so it's a really, wood fired is the best for me. It's very easy, whereas we do have a lot of rainy days. So, are you looking for a survival crop? Massachusetts Zone 5. Your survival crops are Jerusalem artichokes, turnips, rutabagas, parsnips, white potatoes. White potatoes being the very best of all of them. Well, that's helpful, William. I'm gonna look that up. Maybe I'll get off and I'll buy a still. Have a great evening, everybody. I'm gonna go see how my family's doing. God bless you all. Thank you for the super chats. Thank you for everybody that. Karen, you are more than generous. Don't worry about the super chat. And happy 2nd anniversary. Thank you all for showing up. I appreciate it. I appreciate the tips. And the company and talking about gardening. And thank you all for helping my brother get over 1,000 on his channel. If you could subscribe and push him up, he needs lots of views and stuff to be able to take some of the ad revenue back from Google. They will give it to him. So have a great evening. And watch for the next stuff. If you have not gotten my new book, Grocery Row Gardening, you should appreciate that one, I think. Somebody's already parodied it, it looks like, on Amazon. Somebody else has written a book like right after it called Grocery Row Gardening, which happens all the time. You know, I've had multiple of my books completely ripped off on Amazon and reprinted. Fortunately, they're not very good at doing it. So I'm not that worried about it. It doesn't look like it's got any sales. But if you see weird stuff like that, where you're like, wait a minute, isn't that a David the Good book? And it looks like one of my books titles or the kind of stuff that I cover, you can often look inside and you'll see that it's a bunch of my writing, but they put another cover on it, usually a bad cover. This stuff happens. It's an age of rampant fraud. But you guys helped make this Grocery Row Gardening a big success. So the Grocery Row Gardening book, you'll know which one's mine. It's got nice reviews on it and people saying all kinds of nice things about me that aren't necessarily completely true. So you'll find that on Amazon. And somebody asked me the other day, will it be off of Amazon? Like they don't want to support Amazon anymore because it's a big evil company and all that stuff. Yes, I am trying to get it printed off of Amazon as well. We're working on it. It's just, there's a lot of bits and pieces. Amazon is the biggest game in town. So it's like if you want to be a writer, Amazon is your marketplace, and it is what it is. It's difficult, but, you know, um, that's what I have to do. It's like Google and Amazon, you know. And then also beneath this video, if you want to get my book, Grow or Die, it is back in print from Good Books Publishing. I have a link below this video to Grow or Die, The Good Guide to Survival Gardening, which will give you more ideas than we covered tonight. And I'll try not to be so rambly next time. I just felt like catching up with you guys, tell you what's going on, and we'll talk about more stuff soon. So anyhow, God bless. Catch y'all next time. And until then, may your thumbs always be green.